A Young People's History of the United States, Chapter 11, Robber Barons and Rebels. Between the Civil War and 1900, steam and electricity replaced human muscle. The United States built 193,000 miles of railroads. New tools such as the telegraph, telephone, and typewriter speeded up the work of business. Oil and coal drove the machinery of factories and lighted the streets and homes of cities. Inventors and business people made all of this happen. Some inventors were also businessmen. Thomas Edison didn't just invent electrical equipment, he marketed it as well. Other businessmen built corporations and fortunes by putting together other people's inventions. A Chicago butcher named Gustavus Swift combined the ice-cooled railway car with the ice-cooled warehouse to start the country's first meat packing plant in 1885. Progress demanded labor. Much of the work was done by immigrants who poured into the United States faster than ever before, 5.5 million in the 1880s, 4 million in the 1890s. Many of those who came to the East Coast were from Southern and Eastern Europe. On the West Coast, Chinese immigrants made up 1/10 of California's population in 1880. Chinese and Jewish newcomers became the targets of racial attacks, sometimes at the hands of those who had immigrated earlier, such as the Irish. Violence against immigrants could be murderous. In Rock Springs, Wyoming in 1885, whites killed 28 Chinese immigrants. Earlier, author Bret Harte wrote these words in memory of Wan Li, a Chinese man killed in California. Dead, my revered friends, dead. Stoned to death in the streets of San Francisco in the year of grace, 1869, by a mob of half-grown boys and Christian schoolchildren. The greatest march of economic growth in human history took place in the United States in the late 19th century. The wealth it produced was like a pyramid. The supporting layers, those who built the pyramid and held it up, were the workers, black and white people, Chinese and European immigrants, and women. At the top were the new American multimillionaires. The rich get richer. Some multimillionaires started in poverty. Their rags to riches stories were useful for making the masses of poor workers believe that they too could be wealthy someday. The great majority of millionaires, however, came from upper-class or middle-class families. Those who went on to become the richest men of the era, J.P. Morgan, John D. Rockefeller, Andrew Carnegie, James Mellon, and Jay Gould, could afford to escape military service in the Civil War by paying substitutes to take their places. Mellon's father wrote to him, "There are plenty of lives less valuable than yours." These men and others built huge fortunes with the help of the government and the courts. Sometimes they had to pay for that help. Thomas Edison, for example, promised New Jersey politicians $1,000 each if they would make laws to favor his business interests. History books often call the first transcontinental railroad a great American achievement. It was built on blood, sweat, politics, and thievery by two railway companies. The Central Pacific Line started on the West Coast and went east. It spent $200,000 on bribes in Washington, D.C. to get free land and loans, and it paid its Irish and Chinese workers $1 or $2 a day. The Union Pacific Line started in Nebraska and went west. To avoid being investigated, it bribed congressmen by selling them shares in the company very cheaply. Its workers died by the hundreds from heat, cold, and attacks by American Indians who fought the invasion of their land. Rockefeller built a fortune in the new oil business, partly by making secret deals with railroad companies. He promised to ship his oil with them if they would give him lower rates. This arrangement saved him money so he could sell his oil for less, which drove competing oil companies out of business. He bought them up and created a monopoly, a system in which one corporation controls all or most of an industry. The efficient businessmen of the late 19th century are sometimes called robber barons. They were powerful, like the barons of medieval nobility, and much of their wealth was gained through greedy or dishonest methods. In industry after industry, they created empires by keeping prices high and wages low, by crushing their competition, and by getting help from the government in the form of favorable laws and taxes. The government pretended to be neutral, but in reality, it served the interests of the rich. Its purpose was to settle disputes among the upper classes peacefully, to keep the lower classes under control, and to keep the economic system stable. The election of Grover Cleveland in 1884 showed the way things were in the United States. Many people thought that Cleveland, a Democrat, was against the power of monopolies and corporations, but Cleveland promised the captains of industry, "No harm shall come to any business interest so long as I am president." After he was elected, Cleveland showed that he cared more about the rich than the poor. He refused to give $100,000 of federal money to help Texas farmers buy seed grain during a drought, even though the Treasury was full of funds. That same year, Cleveland bought back government bonds held by wealthy people at more than their face value, a gift of $45 million to the rich. Voices of protest. A few politicians tried to limit the power of corporations. To break up monopolies, Senator John Sherman wrote the Sherman Antitrust Act, which Congress voted into law in 1877. Sherman feared that without reforms, people who opposed the power of giant corporations might be drawn to dangerous new political ideas that had come out of Europe. One idea was socialism, an economic system in which the government or the people as a whole own the means of production, such as farms, mines, and factories. These are operated for the benefit of all, not for private profit. Communism went even further, doing away with private property and with class distinctions based on wealth. In a communist society, all goods would be owned by everyone, available to anyone, according to need. A third new political idea, anarchism, held that government itself was unnecessary, even wrong. The Sherman Antitrust Act was designed to reform the capitalist system just enough to prevent socialism or communism from taking hold among the workers and poor. Less than 20 years after it became law, however, the U.S. Supreme Court interpreted the act in a way that made it meaningless. At the same time, the court was giving added protection to corporations. These decisions kept wealth at the top of the pyramid. One Supreme Court Justice, David J. Brewer, said in 1893, "It is the unvarying law that the wealth of the community will be in the hands of the few." Churches, schools, business, and government tried to control people's thinking, teaching them that all was right with society. Poverty was a sign of personal failure. The rich deserved to be rich. The capitalist system was right and proper. But not everyone accepted that view of things. Some people were ready to consider harsh criticism of the system or to imagine other ways of living. One of them was Henry George, a self-educated Philadelphia working man who became a newspaperman and economist. People around the world read his 1879 book, Progress and Poverty. George argued that a tax on land, which he called the basis of wealth, would raise enough money that the government could solve the problem of poverty. Another writer, a lawyer named Edward Bellamy, published Looking Backward, a novel about life in the year 2000. In Bellamy's hopeful view of the future, society was socialistic. Everyone worked and lived in cooperation, not as competing individuals. Great movements of workers and farmers swept the land in the 1880s and 1890s. These went beyond the scattered strikes of earlier years. They were national movements that threatened the ruling elites. Revolutionary societies existed in American cities, and revolutionary talk was in the air. In 1883, an anarchist Congress took place in Pittsburgh. It drew up a statement that called for equal rights for all without distinction to sex or race. It quoted an 1848 document called the Communist Manifesto, which declared, "Workmen of all lands unite. You have nothing to lose but your chains. You have a world to win." the Haymarket Affair. In 1886, the existing system and the new ideas clashed. The American Federation of Labor, a 5-year-old association of labor unions, called for nationwide strikes wherever employers refused to shorten the workday to 8 hours. About 350,000 employees of more than 11,500 businesses went out on strike. In Chicago alone, 40,000 people struck. Another 45,000 received a shorter workday to keep them from striking. Outside one factory, workers and their supporters got into a fight with scabs, their term for the workers who stepped in to do their jobs while they were on strike. Police fired into the crowd, killing 4 strikers. After that, August Spies, an anarchist and labor leader, published a sheet telling workers to take up arms against the bosses. Other anarchists spoke at a mass meeting at Haymarket Square to an audience of about 4,000 people. It was a peaceful meeting. Still, police arrived and ordered the crowd to leave. Just then, a bomb exploded, wounding 66 policemen. 7 of them died. The police fired, wounding 200 people and killing several. No evidence was found to show who had thrown the bomb. The authorities arrested Spies and 7 other anarchists on the charge that they had urged murder. Under Illinois law, that was the same as committing murder. The evidence against the 8 was their ideas and their literature, not their actions. Only one of them had been at Haymarket Square, but a jury found all 8 guilty and 7 were sentenced to death. 4 were hanged, 1 killed himself before he could be executed, and the other 3 were eventually pardoned and released. People around the world demonstrated against the harsh sentences. In Chicago, 25,000 marched in protest. Year after year, all over the country, memorial meetings for the Haymarket martyrs took place. Some people were shocked into political action by the Haymarket Affair. The rise and fall of populism. The Haymarket executions did not crush the labor movement. The year 1886 became known as the year of the Great Uprising of Labor. Unions formed in the sugar fields of the South and workers went on strike. After 2 black strike leaders in Louisiana were arrested and then disappeared, never to be seen again, gun battles broke out between strikers and militia. A black newspaper in New Orleans reported on the violence in the town of Thibodaux. Lame men and blind women shot, children and hoary-headed grandsires ruthlessly swept down. The Negroes offered no resistance. They could not, as the killing was unexpected. Those of them not killed took to the woods. Citizens of the United States killed by a mob directed by a state judge, laboring men seeking an advance in wages, treated as if they were dogs. A few years later, coal miners struck in Tennessee. When mine owners sent in convicts to do the work, the miners took over the mine by force. Workers at Andrew Carnegie's steel plant in Homestead, Pennsylvania also struck. The governor sent militia to control the strike, and the plant used strike breakers to keep producing steel. After 2 months, the strike collapsed. In 1893, the country entered the biggest economic crisis it had seen. The Depression lasted for years and brought a wave of strikes. A railroad workers' strike was the largest and most violent. It launched one worker, Eugene Debs, into a lifetime of activism for labor unions and socialism. Debs was arrested for supporting the strike. 2 years later, he wrote, "The issue is socialism versus capitalism. I am for socialism because I am for humanity. We have been cursed with the reign of gold long enough. Money constitutes no proper basis for civilization. The time has come to regenerate, renew society. We are on the eve of a universal change." Like laborers, farmers were suffering. The cost of things like farm machinery and railroad fees for shipping grain kept going up, but the prices for farm produce went down. Many farmers could not pay their bills, and they lost their farms. Farmers began creating union-like organizations to help each other. They bought goods together to get lower prices, and they worked to get pro-farm laws passed. One of these associations, the Farmers' Alliance, gave birth to a new movement called populism, political and economic beliefs and activities of the people. It promoted the idea that farmers acting together could build their own institutions, such as affordable insurance against crop loss, and their own political parties. In general, populists were against monopolies, also called trusts, and capitalism. They wanted the government to control railway rates and banks' interest rates to keep them from making huge profits. Populists did not agree, however, on race. Some black and white people argued for racial unity, feeling that all poor agricultural workers were in the same fix and needed to stand together. Yet racism was strong in other white populists, while many more simply did not think that race was important as the economic system. Many populists were also against new immigrants. They especially opposed immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe and from Asia. In the end, the populist movement failed to unite black and white people, farmers, and urban workers. A few candidates ran for political office under the banner of the Populist or People's Party, but in city after city, populists allied themselves with the Democratic Party to have a better chance of winning elections. But it was political deal-makers, not revolutionary farmers, who won most elections. Eventually, the populist movement was lost in the sea of democratic politics. In the 1896 election, the corporations and press threw their support behind the Republican candidate, William McKinley. It was the first campaign in which massive amounts of money were spent, and McKinley was the winner. Like many politicians, he turned to patriotism to drown out class resentment. "I am glad to know that the people in every part of this country mean to be devoted to one flag, the glorious stars and stripes," he said. Then McKinley showed that he thought that money was as important, as sacred, as patriotism. He added, "The people of this country mean to maintain the financial honor of this country as sacredly as they maintain the honor of the flag."